I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ready, would you mind roll call?
Yep, Commissioner Shaw.
Here.
Commissioner Wire,
Here.
Commissioner Corbin,
Here.
Mayor Lindsay.
Here. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Seeing no appearances or acknowledgements, is there anything anyone wants removed from the consent calendar?
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Seeing no unfinished business, we'll move on into new business. And right now, we will open it up for a public hearing for a temporary retail alcohol license, Sporty's Bar and Grill, for a Nelson wedding, September 9th, 2023. Okay, and this is gonna be at the Armory.
Yep,
Is that
the
right?
City Armory.
City Armory. Is there anyone from the audience that has any questions, comments?
I'll make a motion to approve temporary retail alcohol license, Sporty's Bar and Grill.
So you moved right on into number 2.
2023.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And again, we'll open it for a public hearing for the same thing, but O'Connor's wedding, September 30th at the City Armory. Seeing no comments, do you want to move into number 4?
Yes.
All right.
Motion to approve item 4. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 5.
Thanks for coming,
Hey,
again.
Thank you. I hope
Thank
you said everything you needed to.
I think I did. See you guys, thank you.
Thanks, Cam. Number 5, discussion and overview of a nuisance hearing process. And Jameson, you want to address that or? do you-
Sure, and I'll ask Carrie to come on up wherever you'd like to
Okay,
sit.
very good.
So we had hired a full-time code enforcement / building official last January, 2 January ago. So he's been on duty for about 1.5 years now. And he's been working diligently on a lot of code enforcement items. I think just this year to date, he sent out 53, give or take, letters to different property owners on code enforcement related items. So he's working with a lot of people around the community. And the vast majority of those folks typically upfront acknowledge that they have work they need to do and maybe some cleaning up to do, and they work pretty well with the city to get that done. Sometimes some people take a little bit longer, but the vast majority of them do move along to the point where they are addressing those potential nuisances. Sometimes we do get to cases where the property owner is not as responsive, and so then we wanted to make sure that you guys are aware of the process that we have to handle those potential nuisances through actions and hearings here at the commission level. So Carrie, you want to introduce yourself and take it from there?
Hi, welcome. I'm Carrie Sanderson. I am an associate with Jenks Law and will therefore be the deputy city attorney for Madison. So
Good.
nice to, thank you. Nice to meet your acquaintance. I have been practicing law for about 15 years. I have some federal prosecution experience, some experience working with State's Attorneys Association and the Association for County Officials. So familiar with a lot of items that you may be dealing with and happy to assist. And before we get too far in, I would appreciate Ryan to walk through a bit the process.
Yeah, sure. I think maybe I'll take it back to the very beginning and just kind of explain where we're at and how we got there. So as Jameson mentioned, Gary Zay was hired as code enforcement officer in January of 2022. And shortly after he settled in, we began to look at appropriate codes to adopt in order to properly handle code enforcement. And so in March of 2022, we had updated our regular building codes that we had adopted the residential code, mechanical code, and the international building code, and we added 2 additional codes. One being the 2021 International Property Maintenance Code, and the other being the 2021 International Existing Building Code. The latter, those two we felt would be very useful as we go forward with code enforcement with the city. The International Property Maintenance Code addresses exterior property areas, interior structures, rubbish and garbage, pests, fire safety requirements, unsafe structures and vacant structures. And then that International Existing Building Code is more determining at what level that would trigger compliance for someone pulling a building permit. So if their building had gotten dilapidated enough where it was a nuisance, then this International Existing Building Code would assist in us kind of finding a middle ground, I guess, between our brand new codes and an older building. So those codes, they go hand in hand very well with each other. When we started code enforcement, we started prioritizing, common complaint issues, police department notable comments, fire department, maybe complaints that had been received over and over again by the mayor or the city administrator. And then we tried to determine what's our expectation for the program. Is that rental inspections? Is that zoning violations? We eventually decided that it would be enough to go after our regular nuisances or garbage and such like that. So we don't do any zoning violation things, any rental inspections, no light pollution or anything like that. So we're really focused on, junk cars and grass complaints, snow removal and such like that. And as we move forward, we've come across, as Jameson said, those landowners that, we've made contact with them and we have some difficulty in getting moving forward on their project, on their property. And so it's just kind of taking a little bit of a push forward. Procedurally, we want to work with residents on a plan that will help them get their deficiencies cleaned up quickly, but also in a realistic time frame and with realistic expectations. So we began by writing letters about grass and weed complaints, and we learned very quickly that that wasn't the best way. So after about 125 grass letters, we created door hangers that we go knock on the door and tell them that there's a grass complaint, and if they're not home, we place those on the property. But for all other nuisances, we stay with that letter format. And so courtesy letter was created. Up to date, there's been 272 courtesy letters sent out. And that first letter is just to say, hey, we've become advised or have noticed that your property is deficient from our property maintenance codes, and here's what you need to do to correct that issue. According to code enforcement officer, they gets about 85% success rate from those initial courtesy letters. So that's, I think, extraordinary. And I think a lot of credit goes to both the residents as well as Mr. Zay for his work. If no work has happened, that 15% that don't do anything, a second letter is necessary. And that second letter is sent out in an attempt to alleviate the issues. And of those letters that go out, the second one, he gets about 10% response, positive response from those. And that's not necessarily, completely getting the nuisance gone, but that's getting some forward positive progress. Like Jameson mentioned, or perhaps Carrie mentioned, up to date this year, we've sent out 52 letters of potential nuisance properties.
So with that background, as you're all aware, the South Dakota Codified Laws allows city to determine what constitutes a nuisance through their policing powers. And the city of Madison has chosen to have a process where in your ordinances, you all will be the judges, so to speak, of whether or not a property is determined a nuisance. So if we get to the point of wanting to request a property to be formally deemed a nuisance, we will need to come before this board as to have a hearing. The hearing process is established again by your choosing, and it does not have to follow the actual processes that we would find in code in terms of presentation of evidence and whatnot. So what we're suggesting for a process is found in this little book that was included in your attachments. And the last page of the appendix D is the hearing procedures, and this is what we're proposing as hearing procedures. You will see in here that, there's note of this being an appeal hearing, but this is not an appeal hearing, this is the actual first hearing. So when we come to you with a request for action on a nuisance violation, we have the hearing and you deem it to be a nuisance, then at that point, we are requesting that the citizen or the landowner have 30 days to continue to clean up their property. And then at that point, the city would have the opportunity to move forward with abatement. Now, it's my recommendation that if you do move forward with abatement, you be ready to fulfill those actions, meaning all the costs that are associated with that. And then at that point, we could move into assigning those costs back to the landowner. Of course, we must be aware that some of these properties, the reason that they're not getting cleaned up is because the cost expense, associated with cleaning up the property. And so with that background, that is how we're proposing to move forward. And again, just to be mindful, there's been 52 letters that are at the point that could be coming before you as a hearing. And I'd love to take questions at this point, if you have any about the process or anything that's included within our suggested actions.
I'm aware of one, and that I don't know what stage in that it's in, but the person I think would prefer the city took it. Now, the question is when we do something like that, if we take it and the property is currently within the 100-year flood zone, does it allow, if the property owner were to sign it over to the city, does it allow the city then to resell that property for redevelopment as long as we meet the floodway recommendations?
Go ahead.
Okay, I would say yes, we could, as long as it's meeting, the new construction meets our floodplain regulations, then yes, I think what you're kind of alluding to is those deed restrictions that are applied when it's a FEMA buyout. So if we didn't go
Right.
through a buyout process, those deed restrictions wouldn't exist, and we can sell that property as anyone would.
And my addition to that is the process that you just described is a little bit different than what we're actually talking about for nuisances. We'd be able to handle that in a different manner than somebody who's not picking up their yard.
Understood, but at this point in time, and that because of the neglect and that, it has fallen into the nuisance category.
Sure, I understand what you're saying.
How broad of an umbrella is nuisance property?
Yeah, it's pretty broad, I would say. I mean, our international property maintenance code, like I said, it talks about everything from, insects all the way to structural deficiencies and structural falling apart. So it includes everything. It's paint chips all the way up to, your foundation crumbling. So it's pretty wide gamut.
So the most common odd complaint I get as a city commissioner, at least over the last few years, is salty flags.
Oh,
Sure.
Would that fall under it?
You're not alone.
again, the city has the opportunity to determine what you feel is a nuisance. And at that point, I would suggest that you include what you feel is a nuisance or the level of nuisance within your ordinances. Be happy to look up where Salty Flakes lands in terms of international property maintenance code. With that being said, the standards for a public nuisance, of course, we go to the safety hazards for the community. And then the offensive nature, you are looking at freedoms of speech violations as well when we get into Salty Flake business, but we can again, when we have specifics, look at that offline.
What about trailers in the street? That's my other weird complaint I got.
If they're out in the street, I guess that would be something that's within our right of way, it would be dealt with differently.
Okay. But it can be a nuisance.
Certainly could be, just probably wouldn't fall under that property maintenance code because that would be on private property.
I did have a light pollution complaint a few years ago, so it's interesting you bring that up.
Yeah, occasionally it does surface. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what other communities are doing as far as that goes, but it's probably something that's gonna continue to surface again and again. We'll probably have to cross that bridge someday.
That's all I've got.
Anyone else?
I will say, I'll leave this last comment for this portion of business. What you have established in your ordinances is a bit unique. Many other cities, and especially cities of your size dealing with this level of nuisances, do have that the commissioners can find a nuisance without there being a formal hearing. And then the appeal process is where you start having the hearing stage. You're a little bit opposite of that. You have a full hearing prior to a nuisance being determined. And so I just wanted to alert you to that. It might be something for discussion at a future point.
How did that happen?
Well, since I have been on staff for 5 months, I can tell you what has happened in the last 5 months. But it does appear that when the ordinances were rewritten approximately 2 years ago, that this was put in as a quote unquote standard practice under the nuisances. And we are now at the first time implementing them. And so this is our first time experiencing the fact that we're a little bit different than other communities.
So now, this has been adopted or we're in draft form, because it says drafted.
Sir, thank you so much for that question. What you see in front of you are recommendations for processes. They will not be found in your ordinances, and we are merely setting precedents. And so it has not been formally adopted. It can be edited at any time. And again, it's not found within your ordinances. It's just recommendations on how to proceed. However, if you should ever end up in front of a circuit court judge in an appeal process, your standard procedures or your precedent will be then put in front of a judge. And of course, I would recommend this be open to the public so that they're aware as well. So again, these are recommendations. They are in draft form. I do not know if they even need formal.
I wouldn't think so. I would put these as administrative policies and procedures, which are open to anybody to review and to learn about, including yourselves. And based on any feedback we've received, we can always adjust them as needed without any formal adoption.
And I can't think of the situation at the moment, but I have, in a couple of occasions, had someone who was in disagreement with something, and they said that it is not in your ordinances. So this year would be administrative outside the ordinances, but would be available for the person or persons in question to review what our policies, administrative policies would be. Am I catching that right?
Yes, correct.
Yes, sir. And the last thing I'll note is that your nuisance ordinances might not look very extensive, but for that statement where you say you have adopted the international property codes. So that's where you will need to send your citizens, is to the international maintenance property codes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we have it backwards, why can't we just switch it?
We can. And that's, I think,
Why wouldn't we
one
just
reason why
switch it then?
Carrie's bringing it up. It would just take a ordinance change through readings and you could switch that to what's common for other communities.
Don't you have enough power? Yeah. As a commissioner.
All right.
Yeah,
So
and
now-
this would really, I mean, almost take the power away, or it would allow the nuisance to be declared, and then if the property owner wants to appeal, then it comes to you guys. So it, in a way, it delays that commission hearing, and here it puts you guys up front earlier on. Would that be
So-
accurate, Carrie?
It would give an individual commissioner the authority to designate a property nuisance.
Sorry, thank you for that question. No, what would happen is that the issue would come before you. It would not be a public hearing. It would be very similar to how you ran some of the last business, except for without public comment. And then if you declared a nuisance, I have seen some cities that do that administratively behind the scenes, since there's not public testimony at that point. The landowner would have the 30 days or whatnot, however you decide, to clean up their property. If that doesn't happen, and they move forward with the abatement, at that point, they can also appeal. So it is just shifting your decision-making to, before public comment. And then there's always the right for the landowner to come and appeal that process and then have a hearing. Why it's recommended to do the way that we're describing, is because otherwise you may have 52 hearings before you.
Right, and I want to emphasize the difference between just agenda item and a hearing. So you're operating as a city commission now, as a board of elected officials, to having a discussion of your policies and procedures. When you enter into a hearing, that's a quasi judicial process. So you have to follow a lot more rules and procedures. And at that point, if the property owner has issue or would like to continue fighting against that nuisance, they can appeal to a judicial format, but they're appealing our policies and procedures. They're not actually appealing the decision that you made. That makes sense.
And I would prefer that it be flipped, because you have a good chance then that compliance will take place. You know, and administratively rather than publicly.
Yes.
So, but then again, too, you said it would make an ordinance change, and that's what I was getting at is if this is in ordinance or isn't, because it's administrative, have we made an ordinance on adopting this in this format, and that's what the ordinance change would be?
No, so the ordinance, so the policy document in front of you is not an ordinance, it does not need to be an ordinance. We have a
Right.
lot of rules, regulations. I mean, if you think about our outdoor pool, there's general policies and procedures that simply don't need to be an ordinance. I think that's kind of an easy example. So that gets extended to a lot of other standard operating procedures. What is an ordinance is our appeal process and our hearing process, which states that in order to declare a nuisance, you have to have a hearing.
Okay.
And
I
what
see.
Terry's getting
Gotcha.
at is you could declare a nuisance without a formal hearing. And then that gives the property owner still has the opportunity to appeal that and still end up here at the hearing anyway. So if the property owner wishes, one way or another, they can have a
an
hearing.
ordinance.
Yeah.
Got it. I guess I would like to see, it reversed, just from the standpoint, I think it will simplify matters and make things go through the administrative process first before it comes publicly.
Yeah, especially on nuisance things, I'd like to be as standardized as possible.
Sure. We could, yeah, we could research that, bring forward a proposal for your consideration at a future date.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Stay for the next business item.
Yeah, that's.
Oh,
So we have gone over the hearing process. Now we will move into discussion of a nuisance violation.
I can give a little background on this and I'll note the language in particular. So we've just had a lot of discussions on hearings and it was intended that we would have a hearing today for 1039 West Center Street. We followed the policies and procedures that are currently in place and we notified the resident of the intent to have a hearing on declaration of a nuisance. And of course, we had to send that out sometime in advance. And over that time, we feel that the property owner has made significant progress. And it's due to that progress that we aren't asking for a declaration of nuisance today. So that's why we have it on here as discussion. So it's not technically a hearing, but we did provide notice. We wanted to give that property owner and the public, anybody, the chance to weigh in. And I'll turn it over to our staff to elaborate further.
I'll add that, in terms of the service, we did use the, city police to serve the way you would, a notice in a court case. So they provided notice. This is a good case to highlight that, the landowner did take steps. However, we're not dropping the nuisance action, because if the property is not cleaned up in totality, we would like to bring back, the potential for declaration of nuisance. I do want to know that one of the complaints from this landowner was that they had insufficient funds to move forward through the cleanup process. And I would anticipate that there are going to be more of those where you may have somebody who would respond that they do not have the funds to make the changes as requested by the city.
And I'm just
Having known a little history on this, they did have the funds to move from one town to this town. I'm just gonna leave it there.
Yeah, I guess I feel like this is a little bit of a, while we haven't completely gotten there, I think this is a success story in the fact that it has been cleaned up quite a bit and it is on an upward trend. And so even if he continues to do, you know, move 5% of the rubbish every week, I mean, it's working toward getting that done. It's just important that we keep an eye on it so it doesn't backslide. And so we'll just kind of keep an eye on the current state, and then we will just periodically drive by that property and make sure we're not going backwards.
And if it were to go backwards or even just go stagnant and no progress be made, we certainly could end up in front of you again for a hearing to declare this.
And you know, there was an issue last winter in that with snow removal and that, you know, some of the things in that were basically right up the curb.
Mhm.
You know, and so, as our snowplows came by and that we ended up burying some of it. So. Anything else? All right, thank you. The number 7, approved engineering services agreement with KLJ Engineering for Egan Avenue North reconstruction from 2nd Street North to 9th Street North. Jameson, would you want to introduce this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, this is Egan from 2nd to 9th. So often when people refer to Egan, our mind goes straight to downtown. This would not be downtown. This would be north of there from 2nd to 9th. As anybody who's driven that street probably realizes, the street is in need of repair. And as staff were discussing what type of repair that might look like, we went through our ladder of repairs. In my mind anyway, I started with, well, we've got a chip seal scheduled for this area. We want to continue the chip seal. And ultimately, we felt that we were not able to realize the full benefit of the chip seal due to the degradation on the street. And the same goes for if we want to do a mill and overlay, we could certainly put the resources in there. The street would improve for a few years, but we feel it wouldn't last as long as it should. And so we really arrived at the need for full reconstruction on the street from 2nd to 9th. If you drive and you look closely, you'll see that a lot of the curb in the gutter is almost non-existent or gone because it's had so many overlays over time. So that can cause drainage concerns as well. And so we feel that we need to have a reconstruction. There's not just a lot of asphalt there, but there's some concrete underneath that was never removed. So when our mind starts going that direction, and we start thinking this is a good opportunity to redesign and re-envision what this stretch of road would look like. There's a lot of pavement there. There's some discussion over how much pavement is needed, how much is the appropriate amount for parking and for driving lanes. And this is also a gateway from the community into our Dakota State University friends here in town. And so we believe there's a lot of opportunities to reimagine this stretch of road to see what it can be. So with that, and when I say I'll be more specific. So Commissioner Corbin, myself, Ryan, and Gary Gagnon with our streets were the 4 that spoke with a few different engineering firms to decide who we wanted to partner with to help design this. And ultimately, we've settled on KLJ Engineering. We have a representative here with us tonight if you have any questions for him. This agreement is for the design engineering for the full project, which is separated into 6 phases: data gathering, preliminary design, final design, bidding, construction, and then post-construction phases. Right now, the agreement defines the estimated cost for the first 2 phases, the data gathering and the preliminary design, because at this point, we don't have a full scope of work identified and planned out. So it's anticipated that in the future that there'd be amendment to this agreement to establish and clarify what the expectations and responsibilities are for the engineer on this project. The current cost is for a total of $157,400 made on an hourly not to exceed basis. I think that's all I would note. Ryan, do you have anything to add?
I don't think so unless there's questions, and like you mentioned, Matt from KLJ is here and.
Any better questions?
I've talked with a number of people on Egan Avenue and that, you know, and Corbin and I had visited once before on, you know, there's a lot of people who feel that it's a 4-lane street because of the extra width and that. And so when I asked, I said, well, would you like it to come down like a single street on other areas? Well, and always the answer I get, as long as the boulevard stays. They're not so concerned about the width of the blacktop that's on either side, but there is a high, how do I want to say, a high number of people in that just feel that boulevard makes that street look like, you know, the entrance to the city and the entrance to Dakota State and so forth. And so those are the comments in that I've got. They believe, you know, the ones that I've talked with, and that yes, the streets could be a little narrower, so it's parking and driving as long as the boulevard stays. And that's the answer that I've gotten multiple times. So,
Yeah, and I think that's the direction we want to go, and there will be stakeholder meetings during this process, so folks will have an opportunity to come and make those comments and.
but I don't think there's any one of us here that hasn't gotten multiple questions. How soon is it going to be done?
Yeah.
Mhm. So with that last question that I just had, do we have kind of a idea of time frame? I know it's been said it's in the 5-year plan, but are we looking at it at the 5th year or maybe the 3rd, or is there a thought there?
Yeah, so this data gathering and preliminary design would happen this fall. That's hopefully putting final design, 75% design around November or December of this year. Final design in January or February of 2024 with a bid date of March of 2024. So construction could happen as early as next summer.
And I know there's gonna be a lot of people out there, they're gonna say, yay, you know, it's finally on the horizon.
Yeah, and so that would be, that construction is to be determined, but it would be estimated in 2-year project.
So,
I know the chamber did focusing on downtown, what was that?
Yeah, so we've had quite a bit of experience with this project and working towards it. I'd say starting with the Chambers Downtown Master Plan, which extended through much of this corridor here, and that was completed in 2020. And then that also led us into our 5-year capital improvement plan where this project is included. I believe in 24, although we don't believe that completion is possible in 24. It would maybe be started, but completion would be at a later date.
But a lot of that information will be
Available.
tied in, looked at.
Yeah, we would make that master plan available for our engineering provider here.
and then in this and that, you know, our water main primarily and that underneath, is that being looked at as a replacement as well or
Yeah.
condition?
Yeah, definitely. Our water mains there are undersized and they're all cast iron pipes, so we would definitely look at all of the infrastructure, both the water and the sewer, the storm sewer, that'll all be evaluated and determine what needs to change and what needs to be updated.
Very good. Questions or comments?
Be fun to see how the project develops.
You said he's here from KLJ, does he?
Yeah, Corcoran.
Is there anything that you'd like to add? Because this is, you know, this has been a hot topic, you know, for years, and so the more information we can get out for the public to see it on the horizon is really important.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to thank the city for the opportunity to partner with you guys on this project. We are bringing along Confluence Landscape Architects out of Sioux Falls to help us with the general layout design and the aesthetic portion of it. You know, as Jameson laid out, we are looking to do this first 2 phases, which is more gathering data and doing public input type stuff to try and figure out exactly what you want to build before we, you know, commit to designing it. And we are doing it on a very aggressive schedule specifically so we can try to get it, you know, some construction in 2024. So yeah, we're probably gonna need, you know, your guys' help on identifying things that you want to see as representatives of the city. And I know that we identified some key stakeholders. Dakota State was in there, and the churches and businesses around the main intersection there at the beginning of the street. You know, if there's anyone in between that you've heard from in the past. Yeah. And then also want to, you know, understand how construction would work. Like, I know that the funeral home and one of the churches only has one access to that road. So construction is going to be kind of hectic for them, but try and figure out, you know, how do you stage this? How do you how do you phase it, how you make sure that everyone has proper access and that you're not disrupting businesses and things like that, but, yeah, I think we're very excited and, you know, would like to see dirt moving into 2024.
I was recently talking to a regional supplier manager of the place, and he thinks that contractors are gonna be kind of hungry next spring because they've had so much work the last few years that like there's a little contractors looking for work.
Yeah, I actually have heard some that are still looking for this fall. Cause there was a lot of projects, this spring that no one bid because they were too busy, that are now being pushed back, you know, and so, yeah, I think there's gonna be sort of a roller coaster here for a little while until things kind of stabilize.
But I was kind of excited when I heard that. I'm not excited if you think we can bid it next spring. That's works out well for us.
Any other questions, comments? All right, so do we have a motion to approve the engineering services agreement with KLJ Engineering for the Egan Avenue North reconstruction, 2nd Street to 9th Street?
So moved.
We have a motion and a whispered second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 8, approved task order number 13 with DGR Engineering for an electric rate study. Jameson and
I'll
Nate.
ask Nate to come up. Nate was visiting us a few meetings ago, I guess asking for some feedback on a rate study which the commission gave. And so he has come forward today with a proposal to work with DGR Engineering on that rate study. Nate, what do you got?
The considerations and everything that I asked the commission for at that meeting, they've been included in this task order and been thoroughly discussed. So that will be included in the final work product that's presented to the commission if you choose to accept this task order. I just want to remind the commission that the findings and recommendations produced by this study will contribute to stable rates and good financial health. This will provide the commission with the data to adopt a strategy that will have a positive impact on our customers for decades to come. This chosen strategy will have a major impact on reliability and affordability for our customers. Any questions for me?
When was the last rate study?
What was it, between 2010 and 2013, so. I'd have to look to be specific on the dates.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve task order number 13 with DGR Engineering for electric rate study.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 9, approved change order number 5 for the public works renovation. Jameson and Nick.
Yeah, I can discuss that and Ryan can fill in details if I miss anything. So I think I mentioned in the past that we have a waterworks reconstruction project going on and the contractor here likes their change orders separated out kind of one item at a time. So if you're wondering why we're already at number 5, that's part of the reason for it. In this case, this change order is in the amount of about $1,700. It's to add a sewer lift pit and a pump to the project. It's a necessary addition for this reconstruction project and staff recommend approval. I'll make a motion to approve number 9.
Second.
Hey, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 10, approved change order number 8 for Northwest 9th Street in Union reconstruction. And Weston coming up to join Ryan.
If there's any questions, I can help out.
You guys take this away.
Okay, I guess I'll start. This is a change order to add bid items, concrete fillet section, 6-inch concrete fillet section and concrete valley gutter, also 6-inch. This is really a change as part of the larger scope of the redesign of the storm sewer system from the initial engineer's work to the work that Banner has done to to modify that. We'd identified that the water, the water flow would be significantly helped by adding these billet and valley gutter sections. The costs, I believe, are on par with what we've been seeing or what Banner's been seeing on other projects. And so we would recommend approval of this change order.
Questions or comments?
This is from our value added exercises, correct?
Yeah, so, we've removed a number of structures, a number of crossing chambers and such like that. And upon doing that, the entire the entire roadway was reevaluated. And like I said, we determined that this would be an appropriate thing to do to carry the water, convey the water where it should go.
And there is, I'll add in, there is a number of these areas that did have a valley gutter prior to or existing valley gutter. And so we're restoring that pathway for the water to get through the intersection. And that's primarily the reason for incorporating the valley gutter in, the same with the billet sections. So there'd be three intersections, I would say Chicago, Union, and then Josephine as well. And there's 2 private drives on the north side of the roadway that did have billets and valley gutters prior to the part of the existing roadway.
We're not gonna have residents in our meetings anymore complaining that the city puts water on their property.
Hopefully gonna get it to the creek.
What a burden you put on it.
Put it back on them. Give them a month.
Glad you acknowledged this, sir. It's there.
Other questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve change order number 8, Northwest 9th Street, Union Avenue, reconstruction.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Number 11, approve demolition of structures at 505 South Highland Avenue and discuss the timeline for site preparation. And Jameson, I'll ask you to follow on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are moving forward with our plans for building a new city hall and police station, which is very exciting. We're very excited at the prospect of starting this fall. With that new timeline, came the need to move quickly to make sure that we can prepare the site for the contractor to start. He wants to start beginning of September. So we, at a previous meeting, took action to surplus the house, and we then attempted to try to sell it through a sealed bid process. However, we did not receive any bids to have the house moved off for someone to take. So at this point, we are looking for demolition and removal of all materials and structures. So we've got a timeline put together in the memo that was in the agenda packet, which I will review. Starting tomorrow, we are encouraging any members of the public who are interested in any items from the house to reach out to the city, to myself in particular, to coordinate removal of those items. We're not asking for money at this point. We just want to make best use of anything that might be there. And also, if anything that's removed before we have to demolish, then that saves us a little bit of effort in removing those materials ourselves. I know that I've heard some interest in everything from the AC unit to the garage, which could be hauled off. And so kind of a first come, first served basis, whoever wants anything, they can reach out to us and we can coordinate. So that's starting tomorrow. And then next Monday, we're giving a full 7 calendar days in order for that to happen. Next Monday be the last day for items to be removed. That Wednesday, August 30th, our police department in conjunction with the sheriff's office will hold a training in the house on search procedures. And then the next day, city staff will begin demolition and removal of materials. I had said in the memo that we were looking for contractors to help us to fill the hole that be left from the home and compact it. We have since identified that there's equipment that we can get a hold of to do that ourselves. So at this point in time, city staff are planning to do all of the demolition, removal, and site preparation on our own. And I put Monday, September 11th as the deadline for Journey Group to take over the site for construction. I'm hoping that our staff can be out there even sooner than that. But we believe that we can make that deadline so that the City Hall project can get started. And at that point, we're expecting a roughly 13-month, give or take, construction process for this building to come into place and be finished. I'll stand by for questions.
And again, if there's anyone, interested in something like that, please contact Jameson and that's so that, he can write down and, if someone calls in and says, well, and somebody's ahead of you or whatever. The number is 256-7501. And then for the, August 30th date, open it up for any of the commissioners who want to play hide and seek with the police department.
Are you jumping in line first there, Mr. Mayor?
So with that, questions or comments?
I'll just make a motion to approve the demolition.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 12, update on the 2023 infrastructure improvement projects. And Ryan and Weston, you'll have the floor.
Weston's my partner in crime, but I think I'm just gonna get started. At the top, so phase 1A, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with this project, very familiar with it. The project included water, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, full width, highway reconstruction, sidewalk replacement. This project's about 95% complete. The remaining work consists of a couple of ADA ramps and sidewalk and a retaining wall that needs to be poured along the property. And then there's quite a few punch list items, we would call those, that consist of, some boulevard restoration things, some side surfacing repairs, the cracks in concrete and such like that. Schedule, we spoke with the contractor recently and he expects to have his concrete subcontractors, and he has more than one into town to repair their deficiencies. But I don't have a real great estimate on when he plans on finishing that work. The contract completion date for that was June 15th. So they are after their final date at this point. A lot of this, I have to come to their defenses. They were focused on the phase 1B project. And so they may be looking for some forgiveness because they were paving roads instead of doing these ADA sidewalks. So might be something that comes up. Speaking of the phase 1B, this project is just north of that phase 1A. It's been under construction the last couple of years. That project again is water, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, roadway replacement, and sidewalk. There's also quite a few punch list items. It consists of many of the same things: the boulevard restoration, servicing repairs. The schedule, again, I don't have a great schedule. It hasn't been supplied by the contractor. We'd like to be able to say they anticipate being done by a certain date, but we just don't have that. So unfortunately, I don't have an estimated time for completion. What I can tell you is that substantial completion date was October of 2022. They finally met that on July 26th of 23, and they'll be working on some remaining items before that final completion date. So the contract final completion date was November 15th of 2022. So they're nearing a quite advanced completion date. Phase 2, that project's in the northwest part or northeast part of town, excuse me. That project also was water, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, roadway reconstruction, and the partial sidewalk replacement. This project is also in that punch list phase. We've been working quite closely with Homey on that, and we've whittled that punch down list significantly. So I think after today's walkthrough, I believe I have between 15 and 20 items. I think that remain. Now that does not include the boulevard restoration. It would just be miscellaneous sidewalk repairs and such like that. So, but we are getting close. The contract completion date for that one, final completion date was June 15th of 2023. So they are a month or two, behind schedule on that. Next project is segment 3. This is our SRF project, segment 3. That project started this year, includes water, sanitary sewer, storm sewer. We'll be milling, overlaying some streets, and then some partial full roadway reconstruction and sidewalk replacement. As far as the 2023 work, because this was split over 2 construction seasons, they've completed all of the underground work. I think as of today, they completed everything. So their roadway reconstruction contractor, Rounds Construction, we're hoping starts this week. I don't have a firm date on them, but we're anticipating that Rounds Construction might come in this week. And then Friesen Construction, who's doing the cemetery and subbase, maybe in next week at the earliest. And that 2023 work was on Northeast 6th Street and then Roosevelt from 5th to 7th. And again, all of the utilities are in, so this project is going very well. Northwest 9th Street, actually, I think I might just skip over that one and come back to it and just kind of,
Segment 3, Ryan, that's a different contractor, correct?
yeah, so I should have mentioned who the contractors were. So phase 1A and 1B is J&J Earthworks, phase 2 is Holme Inc., and the segment 3 is Prunty Construction. We've had good luck with Prunty Construction in the past. They haven't worked for a few years in town, but good to see them getting projects, and they do a good job. Like I said, I'll skip over Northwest 9th Street and go to the water tower. This project consists of construction of a $750,000 gallon water tower. The remainder of the work is painting, interior construction, underground piping, mechanical, electrical, slab work, and then they'll have some tank disinfection and testing, and then finally finish site work. The schedule, and these are estimates, is to finish painting in the air around the last week in September. Interior building construction in October, and that includes electric service installation. We're anticipating substantial completion by November 8th and a final closeout in December. The contract completion date for this was November of 2022. But I believe that the contractor might be seeking an adjustment to this contract date, time due to the derecho and the damage that was suffered. That was natural disaster and really wasn't anything they could control. So I anticipate they may be coming forth with a change order to change that final completion date. Back to the Northwest 9th Street Union Avenue project. This is, I think, the project that kind of everybody's eyes are on, especially with school starting. Maybe I'll open up, start there. So we anticipate, I didn't check late in the day, perhaps Weston's got some more information, but I do believe that winter contracting was on par to get all of the gravel placed in front of the school so that both the east and west entrances to the school will be accessible by both parents dropping off kids as well as the bus loop. So that's good. And they're also placing some gravel so that kids walking on the sidewalk don't have to walk over edges, but that will be filled up with gravel. I believe the school has a pretty good plan for crossing guards that will direct kids to the appropriate places and avoid that construction. As far as go ahead.
I'll add in, I was out this afternoon, winter contracting, they were putting gravel in the west approach. So tomorrow, when school starts, access will be in the east approach and also in the west approach. The buses will be able to come out that west approach. We've also had a meeting with the school, and the pedestrian access is gonna be on the south side of the roadway from Liberty Avenue over to Chicago. Sounds like the crossing guards will cross the kids from the south side of the road to the north side on the west side of the west school approach. So then they would be able to access the sidewalk that goes up to the entrance of the school.
Was Chicago, from what they were putting out, Chicago itself closed for crossing straight over?
Yes, I believe that will be closed. I think that the school anticipates the drop off to happen up Liberty Avenue and drop off, and then when people are leaving, they would go out to the left. go to West Avenue, and that way the traffic should flow in and out a little bit better. But yeah, I believe they were gonna leave, Chicago Avenue closed, and the school was aware of that.
Yeah, that's, the last thing that I read was from, what, Superintendent Jorgensen had put out, and it stated that, access through Chicago would be closed.
So that's temporary access to both east and west.
Well, a lot of times I'll just put it this way, I guess a lot of times we ask a landowner or property owner to, make some accommodations to accommodate the construction. This time, the construction's gonna have to accommodate the school. I mean, they were supposed to be doing this project up to that point and have that paved. And now it's gonna be, the onus is gonna be on them to coordinate their work so that we can keep access to the school.
Oh, that was what I was getting at. How do you get a permanent access in a?
Yeah, so they're gonna have to work on the curb and gutter, probably, they won't be able to work on that when people are dropping off or picking up, but then they'll be able to work on that curb and gutter during the day, and the paving's gonna probably have to happen on an off time where, I don't know if they'll pave on a weekend or.
Yeah, they had Saturday and Sunday, and nobody was up there this weekend, unfortunately.
Yeah, and so I think the paving contractor for his part, I think he would have liked to have been here, honestly, to pave that. But, just wasn't ready. They're gonna give him an appropriate roadway to pave.
So the curb and gutters gotta be in first and that, and then,
Yeah.
and so.
And you will see there is some rework that has to take place on the gravel grade as well. So the gravel grade on the edge of the road, is not stable. The grading contractor is gonna have to come back to the site, re-prepare the edge of the road before concrete curb and gutter can go down. And that work again will have to happen between the drop off and the pickup times of school. Or potentially weekends if there's no events.
Now, is this an area also that the subsoil had to be, additional cement put in it and things and that to stabilize it?
Yep, this was so using a sub base or an oversized granular. So the subgrade was dug down deeper, used a sub base, and then used the base course above that. So yes, it was reinforced with fabric in the sub base. And the center of the road, again, passes the requirements that it needs to. It's the edges of the road that would have to be reworked.
I've heard a guess on what this happened. Is there something we should do different as a city so we could actually get a contractor to meet a deadline?
Yeah, the delays, you can't point to any one certain thing, but I think a significant thing to mention is that, the contractor couldn't work in front of the school for about 3 weeks while they waited for the gas company to do their tie over. The gas company had challenges in getting welders, so, suffering a 3-week delay in front of the school really prevented that from happening, but that's not to lay all of the blame at the feet of the gas company. And there's plenty of delays that went around. They had delays with the boring under the creek, and there's just been,
Well, and then we
some
had some
delays with
electric
weather,
things that had
but
to be
it hasn't been a
too,
big
right?
factor.
We were safe up there. There was things we had to
Oh,
work
but
on.
yeah,
Conflicts that had to be addressed, but we
Yeah.
addressed them about.
With the gas company, how's the work plan schedule communicated?
We started communicating with the gas company years ago, advising them that the project was gonna happen. In their defense, we did make changes to these, plans in flight, and so. We did have to ask them to jump onto things and move things fairly quickly and. Yeah, our communication with them started years ago, so.
And they were a part of a few of the progress meetings at the beginning of this season. Ryan and I both had, private meetings with them outside of project meetings here as well. And I think, part of that was maybe a lack of resource to having a welder on staff that could, perform the work or complete the work in Madison when it was necessary. And I think scheduling is a big item. You know, in some of these, even in the rural development projects, phase 1A, phase 1B. We did not get a schedule from the contractor for a majority of that project. We're still requesting a schedule to complete the punch list work and haven't received that either. This project hasn't been any different. We haven't received a schedule from the contractor, an updated schedule from that original one they provided. Although we've requested it each progress meeting, generally on a weekly basis.
So there were pre-cons, I mean, steps were provided to ask, communicate,
Yeah.
all of this.
Yeah, I mean, like Leslie mentioned, we asked for an updated schedule weekly. And we've been having trouble getting that, and that doesn't put us in a good position to know what they're gonna do, when they're gonna do it, and what resources they have, you know, and the contractor, it's up to them to set their schedule, make sure that they can meet that. And you know, I think there's a misnomer that maybe Banner and the city are out there and we're telling people where they need to be when they need to be, and that's not how it works. It's just not reality. So we need that contractor to have a good grasp on it and provide good superintendents as the prime and make sure that everything's flowing.
But I don't feel like it should be you two sitting at that table right now. I think Winter should be sitting at that table justifying why they are struggling.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up because I spaced it, but I did invite Winter Contracting to this
This is
meeting.
winter contracting on
Yeah.
9th Street.
Yep, I did. I invited them to the meeting. I know that Nick Winter, the gentleman who's in charge of this project, he wasn't gonna be able to make a personal conflict. He did indicate he would try to get someone else here, but made no guarantee of that.
And I'll vouch for Winter being accommodating to some of the changes on the project, because there's been a substantial amount of changes on the project. But again, I don't think that directs away from the necessity of having to schedule out the project and make sure that they're still meeting their deadline.
The other thing that makes it tough, and that is, you know, the public, you know, has been in multiple times and that saying, you know, let us know when things are gonna happen. Well, if you guys don't know, it makes it difficult to notify them.
Yeah, it's one thing if it's a residential, you know, but this is kind of a main artery for a lot of things.
Yeah. And they have been very good about accommodating design changes and trying to get people into their properties, so. But yeah, it's just been a struggle to hit our milestones.
Well, how do you see, you know, at the date that we're at now, how do you see 9th Street before the snow flies? Which could be in October.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the underground work that's remaining on 9th, they need to finish the storm sewer between Union and Liberty. There's only a couple pipe sections left. They have a storm pipe crossing in Union, storm pipe crossing between Union and Josephine. They've got a couple storm structures and pipe at the Josephine intersection. And then they've got water services throughout the project, and then the water tie-in east of the creek. That's on 9th Street. Now they've got the rest of Union Avenue utility to do, but they are nearing the end of the underground on 9th Street. And once they're able to get Zacharias, their subcontractor, and to do the road work, I'm hopeful that goes quickly. I wish I could give you a guess, but as far as snowfalls, I mean, boy, I don't see this not getting paid before snowfalls.
I'll dive a little deeper there, so I keep thinking this project is a 9th Street project, but it's also 9th and Union project, so are you seeing Union getting completed in that time frame as well? 9th Street, I think would be very doable. I'd be frustrated if that wasn't paved.
I do, there's not the number of utilities on Union Avenue that there is on 9th Street, you know, we don't have. I don't know, I guess.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 houses in the apartment, 6, 7 houses in the apartment
We've got
complex.
the water main going all the way up, but the sanitary sewer just goes partial. There's not the amount of storm sewer, and certainly not as difficult to install when it comes to radios.
And part of that, it'd be easier to relay the information on the schedule if we did have one on the contract. So I think the biggest point is we have to find a way to make sure that the contractor is accountable to a schedule that they provide that meets the milestones of the project.
How much chaos will it unleash if we put that in the next contracts going forward when we do projects?
Penalty?
Yeah,
Or the payment request structure.
Well, there is an opportunity, to maybe address that in a pay request. Pay requests are structured on a monthly basis, so generally around the 20th of each month, the contractor will submit quantities for the work completed during that previous period. That's then reviewed to verify that the work was completed and then sent to the city for further process.
Are these not to exceed numbers that were unit?
They are, yep, there is it's not a not to exceed, sorry, it is an estimate of quantities. So based on the original scope of work, there's an associated quantity for that scope. And that's what the contractor would submit on. There's some that would go over the estimated quantity, others may be under the estimated quantity. And then generally at the end of the project, if it's not of a large scale and requires a change order during the work, it would just be adjusted with a final change order at the end.
I do feel like we dance around these liquidated damages quite often, and that's frustrating to me, because I'm ready to just. J&J needs to be fined and whoever else, I mean, that's frustrating, like if I didn't do my job, I should be fired, in my opinion, and that's part of the contract, that's why we have those things in there. And here we are, you guys are put on the hot seat, and you're trying to justify, they're not here to justify why they're behind. And yet, we're dancing around, well, we should, maybe put fines and fees in. I'm sorry, that means somebody should be sitting at that table, being held accountable for where we're at, unfortunately, and it shouldn't be you two, in my opinion, right now. And J&J is same situation, we're a year and a half out on a project and we're still messing with it. That's frustrating, and
It takes a lot of Banner's time, it takes a lot of money.
I know.
To redo these things and go do another walkthrough, and it's,
Every time I drive around town, I see what those guys are chasing around. But I'm gonna turn around and I'm gonna go to the other side of it where we had Prunty, and they were phenomenal. And they were on schedule, they did everything they were supposed to. One night they turned water back on and I didn't have water on at my place. They dropped everything at 7 o'clock at night, came right down to my place. We're gonna rip my yard back apart to make sure we have water.
Yeah.
And not one complaint whatsoever. Have been good about giving us access to our house because we don't have an alley. Bent over backwards to make sure that we were taken care of. And that's the difference, I think, is they take care of the people.
right.
So I'll come in and liquidate damages. That certainly will be a conversation on all of these projects. But at this point, staff, Ryan, Weston, they're doing everything they can to set up these contractors for success, to get the projects done as soon as they can, without thinking too much about liquidated damage at this point, because once it's all said and done and they actually reach final completion, that's the time and the place to have that conversation, and the contractor will have their opportunity to sit before you and try to explain why there were delays and how many days you're looking at liquidated damages. I'm sure they'll try to negotiate down on that. It's up for you guys to hear what they've got to say and ask them questions and decide what to impose on liquidated damages. That will be coming.
Yeah, it'd be easier for them to justify with the schedule. If they could say,
Sure.
provide something, but now it's.
Yeah, and the contract with them does allow for, can't think of the term, but as it goes for days that due to weather or whatever circumstances, they can claim those days, saying that, that's impacted their schedule and they'll are essentially deducted off of the liquidated damages. That can be ongoing, and we always encourage them to do that as they go, rather than a year down the road trying to go back and fix that. But it's obvious with these with these projects, that there's going to be plenty of days well past the completion deadline that's in the contract that liquidated damages are eligible for, and you guys will have your opportunity to decide how many days to impose. It'd be a fun time.
Can't wait.
Obviously being sarcastic.
Jumping back, Sonia, did we look at that franchise agreement?
Hey, any other questions, comments?
Thanks for the.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, we-
Yes, thank you, yeah. You know, and again, yeah, it is important because the public wants to know, when can I go down the driveway, when can I get here? How am I gonna get the kids to elementary school and then to the high school and so. Tomorrow is gonna be an important day and could be a frustrating day for someone who hasn't planned ahead. So,
One other thing, I guess, for the commission, you, Mr. Mayor, if there are any items that, if you do drive by this evening, the contractor will be on site at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. So if there was a few items for of cleanup or of note, we could hopefully catch them and have them complete that work prior to school start.
That's right through there tomorrow, so I'll let you know.
Have you ever called school for speed
No way, we have air conditioning.
in the bus?
No way. We got Windows 265 air. That stuff around. It's cleanest.
all right, anything else on number 12, update on 2023 infrastructure improvement projects?
Lewis and Clark, and that's not part of it. Is that, you heard anything there?
We have our board meeting up. Gotta think, at the last meeting, I think that they estimated they were about 85 to 90% done with those two segments, so that would be two 16-mile segments of water main, so they're getting very close. To getting that completed.
How about the 34, the stretch outside of town?
Yeah, that includes that, so that's part of the 16-mile stretch that I think Carstensen Contracting has that one, and then Almy Inc. has the other one.
They're working on the ground storage tank.
Yeah,
Too.
yeah,
We got a neighbor to it that's been watching, he says, that thing's bigger than a hotel.
it's big.
All right, anything else? All right, then we'll move in. Do we have public comment?
Nothing on here?
Nothing on the public comment? Again, I want to reiterate, if there's anything from the structure on 505 South Highland that the city is going to be taking down, please contact Jameson with your request, 256-7501. And under announcements, our next regular commission meeting will be September 5th at 5:30 p.m. Yes, and that is a Tuesday because Monday is a holiday. Thank you for pointing that out so that we get that in the paper and on the radio.
I'll also note, since it was just made news today, that the final downtown and Madtown event is scheduled for tomorrow is canceled due to the heat that's expected. Unfortunately, I don't anticipate to be rescheduled, but that was gonna be the last event of the year, so now it's not, I guess. So unfortunate to see it gone, but with the 115 heat index, it's to be expected.
And one more note, the electric department, they've been called by Basin. They've ran the last 3 days, Nate, is that correct?
Correct.
11 hours a day.
Saturday was not quite 11 hours, the last 2 days.
But so the gen plant is running. Thanks for all them working out there, keeping that running, and then I'm assuming we may energy alert, I don't know, but it could happen tomorrow, so just watch for that. Do what we can.
Anything else? Then do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.